Today, I want to explore how to be more creative with branding. How do you know if your latest idea is pants? Or prize winning? When you start thinking about it, this can be applied beyond branding and even beyond business too. Let's figure out where you're at with your creative ideas right now. You're gonna have all of my experience. You're going on too much. Right. Got a bit of fluff on my nose again. Why does this always happen to me? Suki, you're to blame. Building up your level of creativity is often filled with doubt, especially when you're a business owner. It's really easy to hit idea fatigue and fall into that trap of coming off a little bit passé. Nobody wants to look exactly like that other business who's copying the exact same tired out brand trend that you keep seeing when you're scrolling through your phone. Unoriginal, yawn. No, that's not working for you. Not another one. Today, I'm going to break down exactly how I go about keeping things fresh when it comes to creativity. If you stick around till the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly how to do that for yourself as well. Okay, let's imagine a dinner party. Thinking about the process that goes on behind hosting a dinner party is filled with a bunch of really familiar activities that you totally understand. And it's this exact same framework that I always refer to when I'm describing my own creative process. So when you take a moment and imagine that you're hosting this fictitious dinner party, you have a pretty good idea of what's involved. From agreeing the date and the time of when the party's even going to happen, then you get to thinking about your guest list. So who is actually going to come to this pretend dinner party? Maybe there's a bit of an ulterior motive involved. You want to invite a certain set of people to come and gather around your table together because you've got another thing in mind. You could be trying to set a couple of single friends up with each other. It might be to do with building up your professional network. Or it could simply be that you are dear friends with all of the people around your table and it's all about affirming that connection that you have with each other. With all of this confirmed then, your mind's naturally going to go to your menu. So what food are you serving and what drinks are you going to pair with that food? We then have a very familiar set of steps that are involved when it comes to preparing the food. So we want to make sure that we serve everything up fresh, piping hot and exactly on time. You don't want there to be any uncomfortable lulls because you're frantically trying to cook something in the kitchen. You want it all to flow. So your mind starts going into how you're going to plan out all of your timings. With all of that in the bag, you're then going to start thinking about the rest of the elements in the ambience. So what's the table going to look like? What's the room going to look and feel like? You really want this to be a well-considered experience. You might even want to plan in some fun activities or things that you're going to ask your guests to do to make sure that the overall party element of the dinner party feels like a really unique and memorable experience for everyone invited. And it's good manners, of course, to thank everyone for attending after the dinner party's completed. It might be that you then follow up and you book another date and time to start the process over again, or it could be that one of the guests is taking the turn to be the host. So that process is quickly laid out for you, and I promise you this is the exact same sort of process I follow when I am involved in any kind of creative project that I work on. I even have this little diagram to show you what I mean. As you can see, here are all of the steps we just covered in hosting a dinner party. And now let's see how I compare each of them to my own creative process. All creative begins with an impetus, and this just means a motive. So something to set the creativity off. With a dinner party, you might be strategically trying to get a certain group of people around the same table in a social setting, like how I've just explained. We then move into a period of research, New ideas are explored, previous creative in the same area is also explored, and in today's modern information age, this is sometimes the stage where a lot of people get stuck with overwhelm, or they might have a lack of confidence about needing more information. A lot of people procrastinate and then stop at this stage. When you're a little bit more practiced at professional creative, you learn that there is a precious phase that I like to call crystallization. I often go into an intense phase of research and then I know to stop and move on to a completely new project or a set of tasks. Or I'll just shut down from work and go off and do something in my life. A creative professional knows that creating this space, this pause, is when we're allowing our brain to figure everything out for us subconsciously. I'll often be doing something socially in my own time, and the bit that clicks all of my research together on a creative project will suddenly pop into my head. This happens for a lot of people as well, in the bath or in the shower. Sometimes people dream about it, but ask any creative professional who's really experienced and they'll understand what it is that works well for them. Moving into mixology then, this is my absolute favourite part of the whole creative process. I am obsessed with opposites. There's a whole other story about this for another day, but what I'd mean by this is actively finding ways to break your idea. Throwing in a really strange ingredient or putting it together in a slightly different way. This is where true creativity really happens for me. And let's face it, the time we live in now, there is a really, really strong chance that your original idea has probably already been done. It is your responsibility, though, as a creative, to put the idea in a completely new frame or a new context to make it as original as you possibly can. The next stage is sign off, and this could be entering into a sales scenario, and this is one of the crucial phases that nobody talks about in the creative world because you have to apply a lot of sales skills into it. And when we're honest, most creatives will tell you that they hate sales and the idea of selling. If you're not making money from your creative, this is probably one of the first stages I will tell you to go and pay closer attention to. Execution. So execution is just that. It's the delivery, the show, the doing of it all. If you rush into this phase without going through the phases we've already looked at today, then there is a really strong chance that you're going to end up with a rush job filled with mistakes that could have been easily avoided if you had planned your time better in advance. Finalisation. This is a common one that a lot of people miss or just don't bother with. And it's true, a really good level of execution is going to feel pretty exhausting to everybody involved. But without taking a beat and doing your finalisation correctly, you're going to miss out on being able to measure out the success of your creativity. And actually, what a lot of creative professionals forget here is this is the best time to sell more creative services. It is far easier to make more money off of people who already love you than to go out and find new people over and over and over again. Leveling up your ideas. I'm going to try and avoid ranting here, but it's true that so many people are just downright lazy when it comes to idea generation. A really good indicator or red flag for me when I'm encountering a person like this is that they'll just stop a conversation halfway through and go, "Oh, I just had an amazing idea." That is always a big red flag for me. If this idea of yours really is in this moment right now where you've interrupted the flow of conversation and you've just had a quick brainwave, then yes, it's true. The idea that you've just had might be a really great one, but you need to be very aware that this idea is like the most tiny little seedling. It's incredibly fragile and it's incredibly new. It's not fully formed yet. And that is what makes it flimsy and small. You can add in some really simple rigor testing into the way that you generate your ideas. And this is the key that makes your ideas strong and mighty and truly prize winning. And people always miss this out because it feels like too much work. What I mean by rigor testing is actively exploring if the idea that just popped into your mind is even original in the first place. chances are it's probably already been done before. It could have been done multiple times before as well. You need to take a critical moment and think, where did this idea come from? Ideas don't just all of a sudden pop into your mind. It has a source. Were you inspired by an advert you just saw? Were you inspired by a song? If you can get into the habit of figuring out where the original source of this idea comes from, you're going to get into a really good flow of rigor testing your idea and its originality. I think one of the reasons why a lot of people avoid this is because they understand just how fragile and tiny and wee their new idea is, and they're afraid that if they start poking holes in it and getting all critical about it, it'll just go away and they'll never come up with a great idea ever again. So shh, don't do any testing. Learning how to actively increase your awareness about the true source of your idea actually helps you learn how to make your tiny little wee flimsy idea into something mighty and robust and really solid. And that makes space for you to then add your own unique flourish on top of it to make sure that even if it is another iteration of an idea that's already happened by somebody else, it's yours, it's unique to you. Like I said, this can feel a little bit scary when you first start trying to do it. But I promise, when you start getting used to running into this exercise with your own creativity, it starts to become instinctive. And if I'm honest, it's quite addictive as well. I show you exactly how to do this in my How to Sex Up Your Creativity playbook.
If I asked you to be really honest with me about where you rank your creative ideas, where would you place yourself? Have you ever even taken a beat to really think about this? You see, in a lot of cases, we only start to question our creativity when we are faced with some sort of urgency, a dilemma, a problem, or a quest. But it doesn't have to be this way. Sex it up! Let me help you navigate your own creative expertise. By following the steps laid out in my How to Sex Up Your Creative playbook, you will be all set up to define what is a pretty average idea from the best idea of your career or even your whole life. You will be joined by fictional character Margot, the simple-minded 50s housewife. Margot's dilemma comes about when she learns she needs to create a dinner party that is deemed creative enough to help land her husband's next promotion. Dilemma: creativity. This playbook can be used time and time over to help you sex up your own creativity in an autonomous way. To find out more and download your own reusable copy of my How to Sex Up Your Creative playbook, please visit www.lauraperman.com/how-to-sex-up-your-creativity-playbook.
Capturing your ideas. I really want to give you this important prompt about the way that you do your idea generation. Now, most people are pretty scatty, so just think about how you have your recipes for when you're doing dinner parties, or it could even be cocktail recipes as well. There's a good chance you've got a few books on a shelf at home. Maybe you've got a couple of Pinterest boards that you've got on the go. You might have 3 or 4 notes in a note app, or maybe you use a different reminder app as well. But these ideas are all over the shop. They're really not organized. If you can find one clear process that works every single time, this is the one process that every single idea you have should go through first. Storing your ideas in a way that suits your brain best needs to be tested out, and only you can test this out because you know how your brain works the best. You might have your ideas all over the shop, but a good way of doing this is to get really methodical. Pick one and put every single idea you have into that one storage area and decide over a little bit of a period of testing, is this sustainable? Is this going to help me? Or do I need to change track and try something else? You might love writing things down in a physical notebook. Maybe your brain works really well when everything's laid out in a spreadsheet. Or you could have a really clever app that is perfectly suited to the way that your brain works, and you feel a peace of mind that you can have that app on your phone, so no matter where you are, If you have a moment, a genius moment, you can throw it in the app and know that it's logged. Once you've found something that you know will work for you, it's really important to add the next step into this process. You need to make sure that you're setting regular periods of time aside in your busy schedule to go through and look at all of the ideas that you're logging. So you're logging all of your seedling, baby, tiny ideas. You need to then have a moment in time where you can clear your mind and critically go through all of these ideas. It could be that when you see an idea, you're like, yep, that's good. That'll be good for me in 5 years' time, so it stays on the list. Or you might have a moment of brilliance idea and you want to bring that forward and prioritize it in your schedule. Just having list upon list upon list of all these amazing ideas is never going to result in action. You need to plan out the time to give your baby seedling idea enough time and enough attention to develop into a real life project. Then you add in the steps of the process we've already looked at today when it comes to your metaphorical dinner party. Then you use each of them to build up your idea. Now you should definitely think about subscribing to my TV, especially if you love the idea of building up your creativity muscles with me on a regular basis. Maybe you think that you're a little bit of a newbie and your muscles are really puny and tiny. Or maybe you consider yourself to be quite a heavyweight in this department. You're more like a toned, tanned bodybuilder sort of creative. Either way, regardless of what specimen you are, there is plenty for you here on this channel. Make sure when you subscribe you hit the bell, and then you're going to be notified when a new episode comes out every single Friday. Ideas confidence. When it comes to having a lack of confidence about your ideas, I will always direct a question like this when I'm asked about it back into the research phase of the dinner party. My question back to you is, are you really lacking confidence in yourself? Or is it just that you know you haven't done the hard work and really explored and researched the idea? If you really have done the research that I'm talking about, you will have a really good understanding of just how original your idea is. You'll have a really good idea of exactly what's come before your idea and where good real-life examples of that have succeeded and failed. You will have then used all that research to take a beat and figure out how you're going to make this idea original and unique to you. It could be that you have a feeling of imposter syndrome. You know that your idea is a really good one and you've taken the time to really do some proper research on it. But you feel intense doubt about your own abilities to really execute this idea to the level and standard that you think it deserves. If this is you, I would look you deep in the eye and I'd say, let's just Dr. Pepper it. What's the worst that can happen from trying? Really? And then together we'd go through and list out all of the silly disasters that could go wrong with you trying to do this amazing idea. Then we'd systematically go through the likelihood of each of the silly disasters and we'd figure out what we'd do if one of them really did happen. As someone who has had anxiety for the majority of their life, trust me when I tell you that this fun, silly little process works a charm every time. You're giving your mind space to kind of climb down off the ceiling of panic and fear and really think about what could really go wrong. Really. Then you can put yourself into a better frame of mind where you feel willing to give it your best shot. Creative execution. I thought I would compile some really fun facts for you today when it comes to creative execution. Are you ready? It took the Rolling Stones 2.5 years to create their famous album, Exile on Main Street. They wrote and then recorded this album when they were actually in exile, and that was from 1969 to 1971. By 1972, this album was eventually released. Take a moment and just think about that. 2.5 years to create 67 minutes and 7 seconds of content. This album had immediate international success when it was released back in 1972, and it is still often referred to in all of those famous countdowns of the best album ever lists that you see, magazines and different influencers putting out on a regular basis. It took Michelangelo and his team 4 years to paint the Sistine Chapel, and it famously permanently damaged his eyesight. 509 years later, it is still there, and it is regarded by thousands of international visitors on a daily basis when we're not in lockdown. Martha Graham devised 18 very special mini ballets over a period of 3 years to hone her revolutionary practice and form of modern dance. Her career of creating spanned 70 years, and in that time she was incredibly formative of a lot of important actors and performers and singers of our modern time. It took 31 years for the Heinz ketchup people to develop from a catsup company into an international manufacturing business with a unique recipe. It takes about 5,000 silkworms to make one pure silk kimono. After the 5,000 silkworms are done and they've clocked off and they're taking a break, it's down to serious hard work of different people who boil, spin, dye, and then print this substance into a silk fabric. Then after that, you've got the people who cut the fabric and turn the fabric into a wearable garment. That is a hell of a long creative execution process, all to create a garment that you should cherish for years and years, whilst looking quite glamorous as well. Did you know it took Ernest Beau several months to come up with 20 different variations of the very famous Chanel fragrance? Story has it that he presented all 20 variations to Coco Chanel and she opted for number 5. And the rest was history. So you see, really great creative execution can actually take up a significant portion of the overall creative process. But it's worth pointing out one more time that every single one of those creative executions required significant preparation, ideas generation, completion, and then follow-up. Don't get upset if you need to re-explore your creative execution a few times before you feel like you've got it right. The greats did it, and so can you. If your mind has been given a little bit of a gentle nudge today into thinking about the way that you do your own creative practice, then I would like to personally take this opportunity and invite you to getting a copy of my How to Sex Up Your Creative Playbook. In that playbook, I share all of the content that we've looked at today in this episode, but it's broken down into an easy to follow step-by-step process that you can work on over and over again every single time you're exploring a new creative project of your own. I'll put a link to that below in the show notes for you. Bringing it all back to branding. So you see, when you start exploring creative as its own independent discipline, you instantly get a much clearer idea of where this fits within the idea of branding your business. You can build this process into your branding process to make sure that you make things infinitely more creative and, let's face it, better. I think it's fair to say that we all kind of generalize creative stuff into something that is naturally the opposite of logic and method. But when you scratch the surface of this, it's easy to start building up your understanding of the industry part of creative, and that gives you a much deeper understanding of how it fits in with the practical action you're taking in your business. For me, branding sits in that beautiful midpoint of everything. It's where logic fuses itself to creativity. We've been exploring on the show recently some of the finer points of the logic that goes into branding. But when you understand what comes on the logic side, you can understand that branding sits in the middle, and then we can start to get our arms and our understanding around the magic creative part and see where it all fits together. And you need both sides of this equation if you want your branding to be perceived as creative and compelling. And most importantly, creative and compelling to the people that you want to speak directly to. If you've enjoyed learning about pants ideas, versus prize-winning ideas with me today, then you're going to want to stick around and check out these episodes up next. I'll see you next time. Mwah.
Now, before you go anywhere, don't forget to subscribe. Mwah!